Welcome to the sleepy hours, a quiet space where dreams begin and worries fade.
The platform was silent beneath a veil of fog, the kind that softened every edge and swallowed sound like a secret. Not a clock ticked, not a breath stirred. The air hung thick with a kind of waiting, as though the night itself held its breath. Then, from somewhere beyond the mist, came the low, haunting hum of something approaching. It was not a sound of this world, not the steel-on-steel scream of modern rails, but something older, deeper, more dreamlike. Lights appeared first, twin, orbs gliding silently through the fog, golden and flickering as if lit by candle flame. Then the train emerged, black as shadow, sleek as thought, its polished surface swallowing reflections like water. It slowed without sound, a graceful apparition gliding to a halt, doors sliding open with a sigh. No conductor stepped forward, no voice called out a name or destination. The platform remained deserted, yet there was a sense that someone, somewhere, was being watched, expected even. This train did not arrive for the many. It came for the one who dreamed, the one who wandered the borders of sleep and waking, the one who listened for music in silence and saw doorways in mirrors. This was not a train you found. It was a train that found you. Inside, the light glowed warm and golden, as if the air itself carried a hush. Velvet seats lined the carriages, inviting and untouched. The walls shimmered faintly, not with metal, but with memory, as though each panel had once belonged to someone's forgotten dream. A clock without hands hung above the entryway, its ticking, silent yet certain. The scent of lavender and old books drifted through the cabin, a strange comfort in the vast unknown. Somewhere in the distance, a bell chimed once, not loud, not sharp, but soft and knowing, as if marking the beginning of something more than a journey, something deeper, a descent, a remembering, a letting go. And so the question begins to form, soft as smoke curling through the dark. Who boards a train that appears only in sleep? What kind of passage waits when time dissolves and memory unravel? What is found at the end of the line where dreams bloom and fade and bloom again? For those who carry forgotten pieces of themselves, for those who ache in silence and wait without knowing what they wait for the ones who never fully arrived in waking life and never quite left the quiet world of dreams. This train is for them, for you. The engine shuddered gently. The world outside began to pull away. Fog drifted past the windows like slow thoughts dissolving into the dark. Inside, everything stilled, save for the deep, rhythmic breath of motion, a movement not of distance, but of depth, of falling inward and farther away. This is not a journey of where, but of when, not a destination, but a becoming. And you, the listener, are no longer where you were. You are here now, and here the air is different. Here the rules bend, the clock waits, the dream breathes. Tonight, we begin the journey on the night train to Somnia. The train glides forward, silent as moonlight across water. You are seated now, wrapped in a soft cocoon of velvet and warmth. Around you, golden lamplight glows with a gentle flicker, casting no harsh shadows, only the quiet embrace of comfort. The rhythm beneath your feet is steady, a deep and distant pulse that speaks not in words, but in breath. You do not need to move. There is nothing to do. Everything you need is already here. Feel the seat beneath you. It molds to your shape, familiar and forgiving. Let your body sink deeper into it. No tension remains in your shoulders. Let them fall. Let gravity take what you no longer need to carry. Your arms grow heavy, not with weight, but with release. Your hands soften. Your spine loosens. The small muscles of your face, those you hold without realizing, begin to melt into stillness. Let your brow smooth. Let your jaw unhinge its grip. Let your eyelids rest, gently closed or half lowered, as the light grows dimmer around you. Now, listen. Not with your ears alone, but with your entire presence. The soft, distant hum of the train becomes a lullaby without melody. It rocks you gently and endlessly forward. Somewhere beyond the windows, a breeze moves slowly through a forest that exists only in dreams. The leaves sigh, the world hushes. Breathe in now, slowly, gently. Fill your lungs, not with air alone, but with softness, with ease, with peace. Let it rise like warm mist in your chest. And now exhale, long and low, as though you are releasing a forgotten worry, letting it vanish into the night. Again, a slow breath in. Let it rise from deep within. And a slow breath out. Feel your heartbeat soften. Feel your thoughts drift like feathers, caught in the gentle current of this moment. There is no past here. There is no future. Only now. And now and now. Each breath is its own quiet world. Each moment holds you like a hand. Notice your feet. They are warm, relaxed. Let any last trace of tension drain away, as though it's being drawn downward through the soles, released into the motion of the train. Now your legs, from ankles to thighs, heavy and still, resting without effort. The rhythm of the tracks beneath you carries everything you no longer wish to hold. Your stomach, soft and unguarded. Your chest, rising and falling without effort. Your arms, limp as seaweed, swaying in an unseen tide. Your neck and shoulders, cradled by the headrest, as the motion rocks you deeper. Even your thoughts begin to slow. They no longer crowd each other. They no longer speak so loud. They drift now, weightless, untethered, as though sleep is gently brushing past them, inviting them to rest. Let the words fade. Let silence bloom. The cabin around you breathes. It is more than wood and velvet and glass. It is a living space, attuned to your calm. The walls feel warm. The windows shimmer faintly, like water seen in candlelight. There are no signs, no announcements. There is no need. You are exactly where you are meant to be. A teacup rests on a tray beside you. You do not remember placing it there, yet its aroma is perfect. Herbs and flowers from a memory you never lived. You lift it, sip once, and feel warmth slide into you like a forgotten lullaby. It tastes of calm. It tastes of twilight. Somewhere farther down the train, a bell chimes. One note, then silence. Not a warning, not a summons, just a reminder that time here is not measured in minutes or hours. Time here is measured in stillness, in letting go, in the deepening quiet of your breath. Outside, there are no cities, no roads, only fields of silver mist and distant silhouettes of forgotten forests. Stars blink through the haze, then fade, then return. Everything outside this train is soft, slow, and impossibly far away. You are no longer part of that world. You are entering another, the world of dreams, the world of deep healing rest. Let your body continue to relax deeper with each breath. Let your mind settle like dust on a windowsill, undisturbed and glistening in twilight. Let the motion of the train become your lullaby. Let the breath in your chest remind you that you are safe, that you are carried, that you are free. The train moves forward. It always has. There is nothing for you to do, no station to watch for, no decision to make. Just this moment, this breath, this journey. And so you drift, safe in your seat, wrapped in warmth and weightlessness. You are no longer watching the dream. You are in it. The train rocks you gently, as if the entire night exists only to cradle you into sleep. Let go now. Let the waking world dissolve behind you. You are here. You are home. The journey has only just begun. The sleeper stepped onto the train as if drawn by something older than memory. Their coat clung to their frame, damp from the mist, and their eyes searched the car not for a seat, but for something unspoken, something they could feel pressing at the edges of their thoughts. They were not startled by the train's presence, nor curious about where it had come from. Deep within, some quiet part of them had always known this moment would come, like a page in a book that had waited patiently to be turned. The carriage sighed with warmth. Velvet cushions glowed with lamplight. The air held the faint scent of cedar and rain, and everything pulsed with a low, unseen rhythm, like the slow beat of a sleeping heart. The sleeper moved without hesitation, choosing a window seat halfway down the aisle, their fingers trailing across the armrest, as if reacquainting themselves with an old friend. With a tired exhale, they sank into the seat and placed an old satchel on their lap. The leather was worn smooth, its corners scuffed by time. Inside were the fragments of dreams, long forgotten, tucked away without ceremony, scraps of paper, bits of string, photographs with faces faded beyond recognition. They did not open the bag, not yet. Outside the window, the fog curled away from the train like misted breath, revealing nothing and promising everything. Trees slid past in suggestion only, their shapes more memory than matter. In this moment, the sleeper felt both present and elsewhere, as if the train carried not just their body, but every version of them that had ever longed for something unnamed. They did not wonder where the train would take them. In truth, they did not believe it had a destination. It was the movement that mattered, the shifting from one state of being to another, the quiet unraveling of the self. The sleeper was not young nor old. They wore the kind of expression that only those who have lived deeply can wear, softened at the edges, weighed gently by longing. Their life was marked not by drama or disaster, but by the slow ache of days repeating, of dreams placed carefully on high shelves and left to gather dust. They had known silence more intimately than most. Not the silence of peace, but of paused music, of unfinished thoughts. They had lived well enough, loved quietly, forgotten often, and yet something in them had remained untouched, a flicker waiting in the dark. The train began to move. It was a subtle motion, more like being exhaled than transported. The sleeper leaned back, their fingers still resting on the satchel, and let the motion carry them. The window became a stream of shadow and starlight, the world outside shifting into something unbound by time. There was no timetable, no destination printed on a ticket. Only the slow surrender to motion, to mystery. For a moment, they closed their eyes, not in sleep, not yet, but in a kind of trust, the kind that comes when one has finally said yes to the unknown. Their breath matched the rhythm of the train, each inhale drawing them deeper into the space between thoughts, each exhale releasing something old and tired. The bag on their lap felt heavier now, not with burden, but with meaning. A whisper passed through the carriage, not spoken aloud, but felt in the chest, in the bones. It said nothing, and yet it filled the space between heartbeats with purpose. The sleeper opened their eyes and looked around. The train remained empty, silent, patient, and still. It felt alive, as though the walls breathed, as though the very air was listening. They looked again to the satchel and, for a moment, considered opening it. But something within told them to wait, not yet. The train would show them when it would guide them through its shifting corridors, its strange rooms that belonged to no map. For this was not a journey across land, but a passage inward, through the tangled woods of memory and dream, through the gardens of what once was and the quiet chambers of what might still be. The sleeper leaned their head against the window, watching nothing, hearing only the faint echo of the train's eternal glide. They did not need to know where they were going. They only needed to be here. The journey had begun. Somewhere deep in the cabin, a light flickered. A door appeared where there had been none. But the sleeper did not rise, not yet. That would come soon enough. For now, they sat with their old satchel, their quiet breath, and the sense deep and growing that they were finally moving in the direction they were always meant to go. The train moved on, steady and slow, its rhythm matching the sleeper's breath. Outside, the world had deepened into something more dream than landscape, more feeling than place. The stars had multiplied, bright and soft, as though the sky had remembered itself. Inside the carriage, time stretched, softened, became elastic. The sleeper sat quietly, hands resting on the worn satchel, when something shifted, not with sound, but with sensation, like a ripple beneath still water. Where once there had been a wall, now there was a door. It did not open with a click or a creak. It simply appeared, as though it had always been there, waiting to be seen. Its surface shimmered with a soft glow, neither gold nor silver, but something between. Light breathed around its edges, pulsing faintly with invitation. The sleeper rose without question, not startled, not hesitant. They carried the satchel with them, holding it close, and stepped through the door as though stepping into a memory they hadn't yet lived. On the other side was a corridor, long and curving, with no clear end. The air here was thick with silence, but not the silence of emptiness. It was a pregnant quiet, filled with possibility. Light moved across the walls in slow waves, changing hue with each step, indigo to violet, pearl to dusk blue. Along both sides of the hallway, doors lined the walls, each one different. Some were tall and narrow, others round like portholes. One looked like a wardrobe door from a forgotten attic. Another gleamed like a mirror. All were closed, all were waiting. The sleeper walked slowly, the soft soles of their shoes making no sound on the smooth floor. Each door seemed to hum with its own frequency, a vibration felt more in the chest than in the ears. They did not try to open them, not yet. They trusted the dream would reveal what needed to be known when it was time to know it. Then, as if answering an unspoken question, one of the doors creaked open on its own. It was a simple wooden door, weathered at the edges, with a brass knob dulled by time. A breath of wind escaped from the room beyond, warm and floral, and the light above the doorway flickered like a candle guttering. The sleeper stood before it, the satchel still in hand, and paused, not out of fear but reverence. Something inside whispered that the journey was about to change. They stepped through the door. The corridor behind them vanished, and the train itself seemed to fall away. The rules of space and time, the certainty of walls and windows, all dissolved like mist. At sunrise, the sleeper now stood on the threshold of a dream, though it felt as real as breath. The sky above was a canvas of shifting colors, neither day nor night, streaked with violet and gold. The ground beneath their feet was soft and earthy, a path winding through a garden that stretched far into the horizon. This was no ordinary garden. Here, memory bloomed. Everywhere the sleeper looked, plants grew in wild and impossible ways. Roses, the size of lanterns, glowed with inner fire. Vines wound up into the sky and never came back down. Daisies whispered secrets in a language older than words. Some flowers drooped, brittle and brown, forgotten in their corners. Others blazed with color, too bright to hold. The sleeper walked among them slowly, awe rising with every step. As they moved forward, petals brushed against their skin, releasing scents that triggered feelings without names. Laughter flickered in the distance. A child's voice called out and disappeared into wind. The path twisted through scenes of memory, blooming in full-color flashes of childhood, brief joys, soft heartbreaks, and quiet. Sacred moments so small they might have gone unnoticed, now fully alive among the blossoms. Beneath a willow tree whose leaves shimmered like silver coins, the sleeper noticed a figure moving. A gardener, cloaked in linen and shadow, tended the blooms without speaking. They moved with slow grace, trimming, watering, restoring, mourning. Their face remained hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but the sleeper felt no need to see it. The presence was enough, kind, steady, eternal. The sleeper knelt beside a bed of flowers and gently touched a bloom that pulsed with a soft blue glow. As they did, a wave of warmth passed through them, a memory not remembered but felt, a friendship once cherished, a dream once whispered, a sadness once released too quietly to be mourned. In the distance, a wind stirred, rustling through the leaves like a voice awakening. The sleeper turned their face to it, eyes half closed, and let the moment sink in. The garden was not a place to fix anything. It was a place to see, to feel, to be. The satchel at their side grew heavier again, though they had not opened it. Something inside was stirring, aligning with this place. The sleeper stood and looked. Ahead, the path was still winding. The sky was still shifting. The door they had come through was gone, and yet there was no panic, only peace. The dream had opened its first layer, and the sleeper had entered. Somewhere ahead, the next revelation waited. But for now, in the corridor of dreams and memory, they walked softly, knowing the journey was just beginning to unfold. The garden stretched on, vast and labyrinthine, as though it existed outside the rules of space. No matter how far the sleeper walked, it did not end. It curved and coiled like a thought remembered halfway through a dream, familiar and strange. At once, the air was sweet and thick with the perfume of blooming recollections. Every step forward was a step backward too, through time, through longing, through the soft ache of what once was. Along the path, flowers bloomed with startling vividness. They grew in shapes not found in the waking world. Petals curled like seashells, leaves that shimmered like glass. Each blossom held a piece of the sleeper's past. One flower glowed amber, and as the sleeper brushed it gently with their fingers, a voice rose up from within the petals, clear as sunlight laughter. In a kitchen, the clink of dishes, a mother's voice humming a forgotten tune. The memory washed over them, not in words, but in sensation, warmth, security, the bittersweet comfort of a moment that can never be returned to, only remembered. They continued down the winding paths where memories clung to the air like dew. A willow tree drooped low over a small bench, and at its base bloomed delicate bluebells. The sleeper sat there briefly, letting the hum of distant time lull them. Across the garden, small scenes played out like fragments of dreams. Two children chasing fireflies with jars in hand. The flash of a first kiss beneath a flickering street lamp. The ache of a silent goodbye in a doorway that had since disappeared. The sleeper watched, not as a stranger, but as someone finally reuniting with the parts of themselves they had set down and never picked back up. Some memories were wilted, flowers curled inwards and starved of light. One corner of the garden felt colder, shaded by vines thick with dust and thorns. The sleeper wandered there with slower steps. The blooms here pulsed with a dim light, trembling at the edges. A toy once loved, then lost forever. A promise made and broken. A friend who stopped calling. Each flower a silent echo. Not painful, but tender. These memories were not mistakes. They were simply real. In one quiet corner, the sleeper found a pond no wider than a breath, its surface still as glass. They knelt beside it and peered in. The water held no reflection, only the soft shimmer of passing moments. Raindrops that never touched the skin, letters that were never sent, words held on the tongue too long. As they gazed into it, a gentle pressure welled in their chest, not sadness, exactly, but the kind of longing that arrives when one brushes close to something true. The gardener appeared again, soundless as shadow. They moved through the garden without hurry, pruning here, watering there, never looking up, never speaking. The sleeper watched them for a while, sensing the caretaker's purpose was not to fix or judge, but to tend, to keep the memories blooming, even the ones that hurt, especially those. For even the wilting flowers needed light. Drawn by some inner compass, the sleeper followed a trail of golden poppies up a small hill. At the summit, they discovered a tree unlike any other in the garden. It rose into the sky like a spire, its branches thick with lantern-shaped blossoms that pulsed with light. Beneath the tree, nestled in its roots, was a tiny sprout no taller than a fingertip. It glowed with its own pale fire, a delicate seedling shimmering in the shadows. The sleeper knelt and reached toward it. As their fingers hovered over the sprout, a warmth filled their chest, sudden and profound. They didn't remember planting it, and yet it was theirs. It pulsed not with memory, but with something more fragile. Hope, a dream once cherished, then abandoned quietly, not out of failure, but out of time. Life had grown around it like moss over stone, forgotten but not lost. They cupped the glowing seedling in their palm, and it lifted easily from the earth. It did not wither when moved. Instead, its light grew stronger, casting a soft glow across the sleeper's face. For the first time, they smiled, not wide or bright, but soft, like the first warmth after winter. The seed needed no explanation. It was enough to remember it, enough to carry it now. The garden stirred gently, as though breathing with them. The air shimmered, and the path behind them grew more distinct. Though they had not arrived by any road, one had appeared, ready to lead them back. The sleeper turned and began to walk, the tiny glowing seed resting in their open palm. They no longer needed to see the flowers unfold, nor the gardener tend them. What was meant to be felt had been felt. What was ready to return had returned. The door waited at the edge of the garden where vine met sky. It had not been there before, and yet it was precisely where it should be. The sleeper paused one final time and looked back over the fields of blooming memory. Not all things had been beautiful. Not all things had been joyful, but all of it had mattered, and now it belonged to them again. With the glowing seed in hand, they stepped through the door, the garden falling away behind them like mist. They did not grieve its loss. It would always be there, alive in the quiet corners of their being. And in their palm, a piece of it would travel with them, ready to bloom anew. And so, with memory stirred and something long lost gently rekindled, the sleeper returned to the train, the corridor waiting quietly, the next door already beginning to form in the shifting light. The dream was not over. The journey had only just begun. The door closed behind the sleeper with a soft sigh, like the exhale of the garden itself. They stood once more in the corridor of shifting light, the gentle hum of the train flowing around them like a lullaby. In their open palm, the seed from the memory garden glowed with quiet constancy, a small beacon that pulsed with their heartbeat. It gave no heat, no sound, only a soft illumination that made the shadows retreat ever so slightly. They walked slowly, not out of fear, but reverence. Something within had changed, not loudly, not in any dramatic gesture, but in the way an old ache dissolves without notice. The kind of healing that arrives not with a bang, but with a breath. The sleeper held the seed close, and with each step, they remembered more. Not facts or dates or names, but feelings. The way it felt to believe in something, the way it felt to wonder, the delicate innocence of a wish whispered into the dark when no one was listening. None of it had disappeared. It had only gone quiet. Around them, the walls of the corridor shimmered. The train was still in motion, though it felt as if time had slowed to match the calm rhythm of their breath. With the memory seed aglow, the corridor began to reflect them, not as a mirror would, but as a dream does, subtly, symbolically. The carpet beneath their feet changed hue, deepening to the shade of the twilight sky. The velvet along the walls whispered with colors from the garden, floral blues and wistful greens. The train was listening. The train remembered to the sleeper, paused at a window and looked out. There was no landscape beyond, only a soft wash of starlight and clouds like drifting thoughts. The stars moved in no direction, and every direction like they were floating through the ocean of sleep itself. For a moment, the sleeper pressed their forehead to the cool glass and simply breathed. It was not peace they had found, but permission. Permission to rest. Permission to hope again. The distinction mattered. A quiet vibration beneath their feet signaled a shift. The corridor expanded gently, and in the space ahead, a chair appeared, just one, upholstered in deep violet, waiting. In an alcove framed by golden filigree, the sleeper sat without hesitation. The moment asked for stillness, and they offered it freely. The seed in their palm pulsed again, brighter now, not with intensity, but with steadiness. It had begun to unfurl ever so slightly, a single petal of light opening in the dark. The sleeper watched, not trying to name it or understand it. Some things in dreams are not meant to be understood. Some things are simply meant to be felt, and they felt it. A slow warmth blossoming from their hand, curling up their arm, resting gently in the chest, not overpowering, just enough to remind them they were here, they were whole, they were waking into themselves. The train shifted again, not with motion, but with meaning. From somewhere deep within, a chime rang once, soft and round, like a bell suspended in water. The corridor dimmed just slightly, allowing the glow of the seed to shine more clearly. The sleeper closed their eyes, and in that moment, the journey flowed inward. They drifted not into unconsciousness, but into alignment. Thoughts softened. The mind grew quiet. The breath became the only rhythm that mattered. As they sat in stillness, fragments of the garden returned unbidden. The laughter that once echoed through a hallway at home. A tree climbed in childhood. The sound of rain on an old roof. All of it flickered at the edge of memory like candlelight, warm and unthreatening. The sleeper let them come, let them pass. They did not reach out to hold the memories this time. They simply witnessed them, honored them, and let them drift, like leaves on a pond. When their eyes opened again, the light from the seed had grown. It no longer looked like a seed at all. It resembled more a small bloom, translucent and ever-shifting, with petals that glowed from within like sunrise behind frosted glass. They smiled again, faintly, unknowingly. It was not a symbol of the past anymore. It had become something else, a light carried forward, a quiet beginning. The chair eased back into the wall, dissolving like mist, and the corridor gently reformed into its long, shifting path. A new door was emerging now, just ahead, its outline soft and unreal, like something imagined but not yet dreamed. The sleeper stood steady, relaxed, curious. They held the glowing bloom in both hands now, and its light did not flicker. Whatever came next, they would carry it with them. They walked forward, breath calm, steps silent. The next dream waited beyond the door, but they no longer approached with emptiness. They carried something now, something reclaimed, something quietly alive. And yet, the journey had more to show. The corridor narrowed again, gently bending like the inside of a shell, and as the sleeper approached the next door, it opened with a sound like the winding of a key. What lay beyond was unlike any part of the train they had seen. It was neither cabin nor corridor, but a vast chamber, aglow with amber light. Above the ceiling was a dome of dark glass through which stars wheeled in slow, hypnotic spirals, their constellations unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. Gears turned in intricate patterns along the walls, interlocked like ancient machines designed not to measure time, but to reveal its shape. The floor beneath the sleeper's feet shimmered like brass polished by memory. They stepped forward carefully, as if they had entered the heart of a clock that dreamed. The glow of the bloom in their hand cast long golden shadows across the chamber, but here the light of the flower felt at home. The chamber received it like a returning secret. In the center stood a figure, tall and still, with eyes that held the depth of centuries. The clockmaker. Their coat was made of stitched pages, fragments of calendars and journals, some faded to near transparency, others inked in words too small to read. Time surrounded this being like a cloak, not bound by seconds or hours, but by feeling grief, joy, longing, awe. The clockmaker turned to the sleeper and smiled, as if greeting an old friend not yet met. "You've come just in time," the clockmaker said, though the voice did not echo. It arrived as if it had always been inside the sleeper's thoughts, waiting to be heard. Time is a strange companion, wouldn't you say? Always slipping through your fingers, yet always carrying you forward. The sleeper did not answer aloud. Words felt unnecessary here. Instead, they walked beside the clockmaker as the chamber shifted. Along the curved walls, great mechanical arms began to turn, drawing down screens of gossamer film. Each one shimmered, then sprang to life, revealing moments from the sleeper's life, not monumental events, but the unnoticed ones. A morning coffee left unfinished, a phone call never made, a breeze that carried something unspoken. They walked, slowly, eyes following each memory as it bloomed and faded. So much of time is spent looking ahead or looking back, the clockmaker murmured, pausing by one of the films. But very little is spent inside the moment. You see, time isn't only what we measure, it's what we miss, what we hurry past, what we bury under our thoughts. One screen showed a train station at dusk, empty but for the sleeper, sitting alone, watching the sky without noticing its beauty. Another flickered with a birthday candle blown out too quickly, a wish forgotten before it was even formed. And another showed a walk home, heart heavy with something they never named. The sleeper felt no judgment in the air, only quiet recognition. These were the pauses between heartbeats, the hours that passed unnoticed. And yet here, in this chamber of memory and machinery, they were given back, not as regrets, as offerings. They approached a long table near the back of the chamber, where hundreds of timepieces lay scattered. Some were broken, others ticking erratically, and a few glowed with gentle light. The clockmaker lifted one and handed it to the sleeper. The hands moved too quickly, spinning in frantic circles before stopping. "This one you wore for years," they said, always rushing, always afraid of running out. The sleeper cradled it carefully. They remembered that feeling, the urgency, the pressure to be somewhere, to become something. But here, in this dream, outside of time, the weight of it began to fade. The sleeper placed the watch on the table, and it immediately quieted, as if released from duty. Another clock caught their attention, small, silver, with a crack down the center. It didn't tick at all. The clockmaker nodded gently. "That one stopped the day you decided not to try again. You thought it meant you'd failed. But time doesn't measure worth. It simply continues." The sleeper held the cracked watch, feeling the silence within it. Then, without needing to be told, they placed it beside the other. A soft chime sounded through the chamber, as though the clocks themselves were exhaling. The gears along the walls began to slow. The stars in the ceiling turned at a gentler pace. Even the ticking softened, like a lullaby. The sleeper felt something inside them loosen, a tension they had carried for so long it had become invisible. They looked at the clockmaker, who only smiled and gestured toward a narrow staircase that spiraled upward. Time moves differently when you stop measuring it. You're beginning to remember how to feel it instead. The sleeper ascended the stairs slowly. At the top, they found a small room, no larger than a dream. Its walls were glass, and beyond it stretched a sea of constellations. In the center of the room sat a single timepiece, shaped like a locket, open and unmoving. Inside was no face, no hands, only a mirror. The sleeper looked into it and saw no reflection, only the memory of a single moment that had mattered deeply but passed unnoticed. A breath taken in silence, a choice made in kindness. The locket pulsed once with soft light. When they descended, the clockmaker was gone. The chamber was quiet. All the clocks rested now. The bloom in the sleeper's hand shone brighter than before, and its light reflected in the glass dome above, echoing among the stars. They turned back toward the corridor. The door was waiting. Behind it, the train still moved, its steady rhythm the heartbeat of the dream. The next part of the journey called softly from beyond the glass, and still, the sleeper did not rush. They walked slowly, as if time now moved with them, not ahead of them, as if there were no longer need to chase it. The sleeper stepped back through the doorway, leaving behind the chamber of gears and stars. The rhythm of the train pulsed beneath their feet, steady and grounded, as if the very motion of the tracks had shifted in tempo to match the calm now residing in their chest. It was subtle, this change, but unmistakable. Time, once a weight, pulling their mind forward or yanking it back, now moved like breath, present, flowing, natural. Their seat awaited, still as they had left it, draped in velvet shadows and golden lamplight. They sat slowly, folding their legs beneath them, and let their fingers trace the smooth edge of the bloom still glowing gently in their palm. The warmth of it had changed, not hotter, but deeper, as if it now pulsed with an understanding rather than a memory. They opened their other hand, and there, somehow, rested the stopped watch from the clockmaker's car. Its face was calm, its silence not broken, but at peace. The hands remained still, and yet there was no urgency in the sleeper's gaze. The stillness felt earned. Outside the train window, the world no longer rushed past in a blur. The landscape had softened into a twilight realm of rolling hills and sky-brushed meadows. Trees stood tall in silhouette, unmoving like guardians of the dream. A river wound beside the tracks, not in a hurry, merely existing in its own time. Even the stars above seemed less in motion and more in presence. Everything aligned, not by measure, but by meaning. The sleeper closed their eyes and felt it the moment, fully. The softness of the seat beneath them, the subtle sway of the train, the sound of metal gliding smoothly against track. No thoughts of what came next, no echoes of what had been missed, only the pulse of breath and the echo of still clocks. For so long, time had been a chase. The days stacked like paper, folded and folded again until memory collapsed under the pressure. So many mornings, waking to a sense of lateness, of not enough, of something lost before it even had a name. But now, in this dream that unraveled, time like thread, the sleeper remembered something long forgotten, how to be inside a single moment without trying to capture it, without weighing it, without needing it to mean anything more than itself. A low chime rang somewhere far off within the train, like a bell tolling, not for urgency, but for arrival. It echoed gently through the walls and then faded into a silence that did not demand to be broken. The sleeper placed the stopped watch on the seat beside them and rested their hands over the bloom, now opening ever so slightly in their palm. Tiny petals, luminous and delicate, unfurled like a sigh. Each one shimmered as if catching a different memory of light. The sleeper thought of the days they had hurried through, the conversations they had only half heard, the sky they had passed beneath without seeing. And then they let those thoughts fall away like dried leaves on a slow wind that regrets did not vanish, but they softened. They no longer held the same grip. Time had not changed its nature. It was the sleeper who had changed their relationship to it. The chase had ended. What remained was presence. As the train curved gently along its endless track, the sleeper leaned their head back against the cushioned seat. They breathed in, they breathed out. In that breath, years dissolved, deadlines turned to mist. The clock inside their chest no longer raced. It beat softly, like wings resting between flights. Through the window, a sun neither rising nor setting hovered on the horizon, painting the world in a golden hush. It was a light that belonged to no hour, a time that could not be named. The sleeper watched it without need to understand. Some moments are not meant to be solved, only witnessed. The train whispered on somewhere ahead. Other dream cars waited. The corridor would return. Another door would open. But for now, the sleeper remained still, not because there was nowhere to go, but because they had finally arrived here, in this slowness, in this breath, in this dream. They opened their eyes once more and looked at the stopped watch on the seat beside them. Its face gleamed gently in the amber light. The hands had not moved, but somehow it now told the truest time, now. And that was enough. The door appeared without sound, gliding open as if it had always been there, waiting in stillness for the moment to ripen. The sleeper rose and stepped through it, not in haste, not in fear, but with the quiet certainty of one who knows something is about to be seen that cannot be unseen. The corridor outside shimmered with a silvery haze, its light gentler now, less like a hallway and more like a boundary between inner and outer worlds. The train swayed beneath their feet, each motion rhythmic, almost like the breathing of some vast, dreaming creature. The next car did not open into a landscape or a workshop or a garden. It opened into a silence so complete it felt like stepping into velvet. The sleeper entered slowly. The room was wide and circular, with no corners, no sharp edges, no sound save the distant hum of the train's eternal passage. The walls, floor, and ceiling were made entirely of mirrors, but these were no ordinary mirrors. They held no reflection in the ordinary sense. Instead, they shimmered with layers of possibility, like water holding echoes of the sky. The sleeper took a step forward, and the mirrors responded. One rippled slightly, showing an image of themselves, younger, more afraid, eyes darting, shoulders tight with effort. Another mirror flickered into focus, revealing a version of the sleeper smiling gently at a stranger, kindness pouring from their hands like warm light. A third shimmered with emptiness, not darkness, just absence, an image of the sleeper without color, without weight, a ghost among moments never lived. More mirrors awakened with every step, each one showing not memories, but possibilities, expressions of self scattered across the terrain of dream. They moved slowly through the room, each reflection calling to some hidden thread within. One version wore weariness like armor. Another danced without music beneath a pale, endless sky. One stood still, staring out at the viewer with eyes that seemed to understand too much. One was crying, one was laughing, one was silent, simply watching. The sleeper did not try to judge these images. They did not label them as right or wrong, beautiful or broken. They only watched, heart open, as the many faces of themselves flickered into being and then faded again. A quiet truth began to unfold. None of these versions were lies. Each held something real, something once felt, something still possible. They were not masks, but facets, scattered pieces of a single whole. Then came the mirror that did not shimmer, did not flicker. It simply stood still and solid, the glass clear as water. Within it, the sleeper saw not a version, but themselves, as they were now. Not perfected, not lost in fantasy, but grounded in the strange middle place between who they had been and who they were becoming. The eyes in the reflection met theirs, and did not look away. There was no performance in that gaze. It did not seek approval. It only existed, fully present. The sleeper stepped closer. With each footfall, the sounds of the train seemed to fade, until the only thing left was breath and heart and the soft pulse of the mirrors. The glass before them did not distort. It offered no dream. It offered something far more intimate, recognition. They reached out, and the reflection did not follow their hand. It matched it perfectly, finger to finger, palm to palm, like two halves remembering how to meet. Their hand touched the surface, and the mirror, warm to the touch, did not resist. It rippled once, then pulled inward like silk parting. Without hesitation, the sleeper stepped through. There was no jolt, no rush of sensation, only silence. On the other side was no room, no train, no walls. It was a landscape, wide and open, made not of physical things, but of impressions, colors, textures, of emotion. The ground beneath their feet shimmered like memory. The sky above was both dawn and dusk, shifting endlessly in tones of blue and violet. Trees grew in slow spirals from hills that hummed with quiet music. Rivers of light flowed through valleys of thought. This was not a dream in the usual sense. This was the inner terrain, the landscape of self. And yet, it was not overwhelming. It did not demand answers. It simply was. The sleeper walked slowly, their feet leaving no mark, but feeling every step. They passed places that looked like feelings once buried, soft valleys of sorrow, old mountains of joy. They saw a clearing where a child once sat waiting, and a distant bridge where an old version of themselves had turned back before reaching the other side. They did not need to touch anything to know it. It all belonged to them. It always had. In the middle of this world, beneath a sky without time, they stopped. The bloom in their hand pulsed with a gentle glow. Its petals were open now, revealing a center filled with light, not bright or blinding, but deep and warm, like the memory of a fire long burned out, but still warming the stones. The sleeper breathed. They felt the moment hold them, not judge them, not change them, only hold. And in that stillness, they understood. They did not need to choose between the reflections. They did not need to chase what had been lost. Everything. They had seen every version of themselves, every fractured image and buried sorrow, every forgotten joy. They were all them. They were not broken. They were many, and they were whole. The light around them began to dim, not as an ending, but as a soft closing of a page. The landscape remained, but the clarity of the moment began to fade into the natural mist of sleep. The train called softly in the distance. Somewhere, far away but drawing near, a seat waited, a return to motion. The sleeper turned once more, toward the sound, the bloom still open in their hand, and stepped forward into the gentle dark. The sleeper moved through the quietness like a shadow shaped by light. Each step through the inner landscape echoed with silence, not emptiness, but presence. They were no longer watching themselves from a distance or walking through echoes of memory. They were within the very heart of being. This place, wide as sky and silent as breath, held nothing artificial. Here, the self was not worn like a mask or divided by roles or names. Here, it simply was. There were no signs, no path, no guide. And yet, the sleeper felt drawn forward, not by direction, but by familiarity. The world around them shifted gently, responding to their awareness. A field of soft grass bowed as they passed. The wind stirred with a voice like their own, whispering, not in words, but in understanding. The stars above, suspended in motionless twilight, pulsed with a rhythm that felt more like a heartbeat than light. They reached a ridge where the ground sloped into a wide basin filled with reflections. Pools of still water lay across the land like eyes turned skyward. In each one, a vision stirred. Not mirrors this time, not versions. These were moments. Some were quiet, simple memories of walking through rain without a destination, of reading a book and feeling the world soften, of hearing a laugh and knowing it mattered. Others were heavier, moments of silence that held pain, of words not spoken, of goodbyes left unresolved. But none of the reflections judged, none of them reached out to pull the sleeper away. They only existed, side by side, equal and unafraid. The sleeper knelt beside one of the pools and looked into it. A single image rose, a moment once lived and long forgotten. They saw themselves, sitting alone, years ago, beneath a tree, on a day that felt lost to time. The light was golden, their hands were still. In that silence, something had stirred inside them, something wordless and real, and it had been pushed aside by life's hurry. Now it returned like a tide finding shore. That self, sitting quietly, looked up and smiled, not with joy or sorrow, just with knowing, the sleeper whispered. And though no sound passed their lips, the message moved like wind across the basin. I remember you. The vision faded, the water still. All around, the reflections began to dissolve into mist, and in their place came something deeper, a sense of space that did not need to be filled, a quiet that did not fear itself. The sleeper stood, and the bloom in their hand opened a little more, its center glowing now with a steady light. It was no longer something they had found. It was something that had always been within them, waiting for its own season to return. The ground beneath their feet shifted gently, and the colors of the landscape began to dim into silvers and blues, not in sadness, but in readiness. The dream was changing again. The air had cooled, carrying with it a softness like the breath before sleep. The sky stretched wider, and far in the distance, a faint glow marked the silhouette of the train, still, traveling, always waiting. The sleeper took a final look at the basin, now still and blank, its waters reflecting not images, but possibility. Then they turned and began the walk back. The path did not appear. They did not need it. They carried the way within them now. With every step, the sound of the train grew stronger, the rhythmic whisper of metal and motion calling them home. They reached the doorway where the mirror had once stood, though now there was only light, no barrier, no glass, only the invitation to return. They passed through it. The mirror room was empty now. The other reflections had gone. Only the single mirror remained, the one that had shown them as they were. It no longer shimmered. It simply stood there, still and true. The sleeper paused, and this time their reflection did not feel separate. It felt familiar, like an echo aligned at last with its source. They gave the reflection a small nod, a gesture not of farewell, but of recognition. Then they turned toward the corridor, where the soft lights waited, and stepped once more into the golden hush of the train. There were no words needed to explain what had happened. The self had been remembered, not rebuilt, not reimagined, simply seen, whole. And as the door closed gently behind them, the sleeper knew the journey was not about becoming someone new. It was about remembering the one who had always been there, beneath the noise, beneath the forgetting, beneath the passing of time. The dream was fading, but not ending. The path was shifting, but not vanishing. The sleeper walked back through the corridor with steady feet, carrying in their hand a bloom of quiet light, and in their chest a stillness that would remain. The train was waiting. The rhythm of rest was near, and beyond the next doorway, the return would begin. The sleeper stepped gently into the return car, and at once everything softened. The lights were dimmed to a golden hush, like dusk resting against old velvet curtains. The windows glowed faintly, but not with scenes or visions, just light, warm, welcoming light. The hum of the train was slower now, as though it too was winding down, its breath long and even, like the breath of one who is just beginning to dream. They walked slowly between the rows of seats, which now seemed broader, deeper, designed not for watching or waiting, but for simply being. The motion of the train had changed. It no longer rushed or pulled. It floated. Each sway of the car was a lullaby, each distant clack of the track a heartbeat beneath layers of soft sound. The sleeper let their fingers trail along the back of a seat, feeling the familiar texture of velvet, cool and smooth. The scent of night air and lavender drifted gently around them, subtle as a memory of calm. Sleeper returned to their seat, the one they had taken before the journey began. It welcomed them without fanfare. The cushion yielded perfectly beneath them, and the headrest curved as if shaped just for the tilt of their neck. They leaned back, their hand opened, and in it the bloom pulsed once more, no longer a secret, no longer buried. Its light dimmed and glowed like a firefly resting, a soft rhythm that matched their own breath. It was not meant to guide them now. It was meant to stay. Outside the window, the scenery had dissolved into something that couldn't be named. There were no trees or towns or skies, only a stretch of pure horizon where colors moved like whispers, blues melting into silver, silver deepening into violet, violet washing into pale rose. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of sleep, the first threads of morning were being woven. But here, inside, the moment was held. No rush, no demand, just return. The train sighed as it moved, a long exhale carrying away all the weight. The sleeper had not realized they held. They felt it leaving. The worry, the question, the tension buried in the corners of the body, the restless pulse of unfinished thoughts. It all drifted upward like mist, touched by the breath of the train, and vanished into the hush. In its place came quiet, not the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. The sleeper let their eyes close, not tightly, just enough to blur the world into soft shadows. Their shoulders softened, their spine settled into ease, their hands rested open on their lap, and their breath slowed with the rhythm of the train, in, out, the way waves meet a shore and then return, in, out. Each breath a step farther from the waking world, a voice, not from a mouth, but from the space around them, spoke not in sentences, but in feeling. You have walked the corridors, you have stepped through the doors, you have remembered what you had forgotten. There is no destination, only the journey you carry. The sleeper felt warmth at their side, the way sunlight touches the edge of a blanket. They did not open their eyes. They did not need to. They knew they were held, not by arms or figures, but by the quiet truth that they were not lost, not now, not ever. Even when they forgot themselves, they had not ceased to be. Outside the window, a shape began to form. Not a place, but a horizon. The faint suggestion of a rising sun where the dream world met the threshold of rest. The color was neither day nor night. It was the color of the beginning, not the loud shout of dawn, but the first quiet note before it, a sign of light. The sleeper did not stir, they simply breathed. The rhythm of the train slowed again, not stopped, just deeper, like a heartbeat sinking into sleep. The car dimmed. Further, the ceiling lights faded until they were only soft stars, scattered far above. The floor beneath the sleeper felt like cloud and memory. Even their name had softened. They were not a role, not a list of what they had done. They were simply themselves, wrapped in stillness, held by rest. The bloom in their palm now glowed from within, not bright, not fading, just steady. It had never needed to blaze. It was not a beacon, it was a companion, a part of them that had waited patiently to be seen, and now it glowed because it had been remembered. In the stillness, the sleeper felt the dream begin to dissolve, not like something lost, but like something fulfilled. The walls of the car thinned into mist. The sound of the train was now the sound of breath. The motion of the tracks was the pulse of the sleeper's own body, gently slipping into rest. They did not hold on, they did not reach, they simply let go. Their breath deepened, their chest rose, then fell. Their thoughts uncoiled like ribbon drifting in water. And as the dream folded into night's embrace, the sleeper, whole and held, let sleep gather them in silence. The journey was complete. The return had begun. All sound quieted. The train, once a gentle whisper beneath the sleeper's body, faded into the hush of nothing. No wheels, no rhythm, no light flickering along the ceiling. Only stillness remained, vast and soft as sleep itself. It was the kind of quiet that lives at the heart of the night, deeper than silence, older than words. Here, in this last tender moment, there was no past to revisit, no dream to follow, no future to meet. There was only now, this breath, this stillness, this peace. The sleeper rested in the fold between waking and sleep, no longer pulled by questions, no longer wandering through mirrored halls or timeless rooms. They had arrived not at a station, but at a stillness that did not move because it did not need to. The world around them had dissolved into warmth. The velvet seat, the soft hum of the train, even the golden light, all of it had become one quiet embrace. There was no border between the sleeper and the dream. They were part of it now, drifting within it like starlight woven into the dark. Breath moved through them with ease, in, out. The body softened in every place. The hands opened without tension. The shoulders released their weight. The forehead smoothed, and the jaw let go. Each breath slowed the rhythm of the mind, easing the thoughts into silence, letting them fall like petals to the floor of sleep. In, out. Slower now, deeper. Each inhale a rising tide, each exhale a falling leaf. There were no more doors to open, no more visions to pass through. Only the vast, soft quiet of deep rest. The mind floated now, untethered by time. The dream had become a sea, and the sleeper its calmest wave, drifting without resistance. They no longer needed to remember where they had been. The journey had folded into the breath, into the body, into the still core of their being. And here, they were safe, completely, unshakably safe. There was no need for thought, no images now, no memories or faces. Only the feeling of peace pressing lightly against every inch of the body, like a warm tide. Each beat of the heart was slower, steadier, more distant. The light within their palm, the bloom that had followed them through every loop, every lesson, every room now faded, not into darkness, but into union with the silence around them. Its glow became part of the quiet, part of the breath, part of the dream. It did not leave. It became the sleeper's breath, now almost still, moved like the wings of a moth in moonlight, barely there, barely moving, yet steady, calm, and eternal. The train no longer existed as form. It was a sensation, now, a cradle of feeling, a hush that surrounded and protected. The sleeper was no longer on a journey. They had become the stillness itself. And in this final moment, not spoken but felt, the last knowing came, soft as a sigh through an open window. You are safe. You are whole. You may sleep now. There was no reply needed, no more steps to take. The sleeper gave themselves to rest. With nothing held back, thought faded into breath. Breath faded into warmth. Warmth faded into the stars. And the stars, one by one, dimmed into silence. The world was still. The sleeper slept.